afternoon. My name is B. Kyle, President and CEO of the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce. Delighted to be here. As I get started and we get set up, I want to just give a shout out to some board members who chose to join us because they heard rumors about great food. And so they're sitting in the center table here in the fabulously stylish suit with no hair. Is my good friend Steve Schemenauer. He's an attorney with Stinson. Stinson is a law firm in Minneapolis. They've got about 13 locations across the states, 500 plus attorneys, and he honors us by serving on the board. He's also a full bird colonel with the Army National Guard in Minnesota, has deployed more than once on our behalf. Thank you for your service, sir, each and every day. To his left is our very own Tony, what's your last name again? Tony Schwartz, who is service personified. I've known Tony since I moved back to Minnesota, to Oakdale. I was still married, my kids were toddlers. We moved to Oakdale because I told my husband we were moving back from the East Coast, and I said, the only city we're moving to is Oakdale. And I'm not even telling you that story. I grew up in Woodbury, and I said, we're moving to Oakdale. Yes, dear. And so by 2006, I had met Tony through the Oakdale Business Professionals Association. Actually, Mark Cove, Tony, and Frank were the three people, and then, of course, Stacy, that I remember from way back in the day. And he is on our board and has been, joking aside, because he likes to deflect true appreciation, he has been service personified. He sits on the board. He runs our ambassadors of over 60 people, as you know, who create that joyful, welcoming experience. So that's Tony Schwartz, and I'm grateful for you too, sir. And actually the nicest person of that group is Terry Baniszewski. So she also is on my board. She is the business development lead for Sunrise Banks. And interestingly enough, I just learned today, Sunrise Banks is a B Corp. And if you don't know what they are, I suggest you look them up because it is the future of business in terms of partnering profit with purpose. And Sunrise Banks is a community bank and yet deeply engaged in innovative thinking around investments. So, and Terry has been the face of business development for many, many years. If you need to know anybody or anything, you give Terry a call and she's guaranteed to have an introduction for you. And I just have to, so thank you. And I just love this. Thank you for being here, sir. In St. Paul, I have to find every political person. We pause and we thank you and we acknowledge. So this informality is really a fresh breath of air. So B. Kyle. Just where I come from, a private sector, military veteran, spent some time overseas when it was still West Germany. That's a story for another day. Spent most of my career in private sector until I joined the Port Authority in 2006, which is when I started doing business development myself. Spent a lot of time in the East Metro with the various chambers. Who knew that 17 years later, what's the math? 14 years later, I'd be trying to work together with some of these chambers with whom I've had great relationships over the years. So why am I here? What are we talking about? So I joined the chamber 2.5 years ago. And I was certain I wasn't the right person for the job. I'm not presidential. I'm certainly not as well connected as my predecessor, Matt Kramer, who was Governor Pawlenty's chief of staff. So they had to step down a notch when he was done. It's like, well, okay, let's talk to B. She at least knows people. So I started about 2.5 years ago, and my particular interest is in operational efficiencies, and my superpower, which we talk a lot about, so you should know what your superpower is. My superpower is coalition building and bringing people together. I don't always know what you're going to do when you're together, but we end up together somehow. So I'm looking at my organization. How are we looking revenue-wise? How are we looking for members? How are we as a sector? Are we young, innovative, mature, senior, sunsetting? And I learned some things that, and ultimately I found out are not unique to my organization, but indeed are being found in chambers and business associations across the country. We're a mature sector, and if you in marketing understand, you're an innovative company, you're a mature company, and then you end up on this back end of that growth curve, and you're a mature to sunsetting, and you either need to reinvent and innovate to start another curve of growth, or you fade. Chambers are on the back end, and we, as an industry, typically are under-technologized, understaffed. We tend to be overworked, underpaid, and so you have folks working so hard just to keep up that we don't have a lot of time to invest in innovation and new ideas, because frankly we have to find new members to fill the ones who just left, and that takes at least half the year before we start making any money. And who has time or money for technology? It's a challenging industry, coupled with understaffing, which is kind of a problem across the country. So I'm looking at the trends. Membership as a percentage of revenue is shrinking. I found some research online nationally, spoke to a lot of other chambers. What are you hearing? What are you doing? How are you innovating? How can we continue to meet the needs of our members, which is the most important reason we're together? And so I did a lot of research, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, given the fact that I prefer you ask questions than me talk at you, I'm going to zip through this, but you'll be able to find it online and do more research if you're interested. There's an organization, a national, the Association of Chambers of Commerce Executives. People like me who hang out together nationally, share research. That is really extraordinarily powerful. They share operations manuals and bylaws, and they teach us newbies how to run our business. They teach us about board etiquette and resolutions, et cetera. And so they wrote a paper a few years ago that I discovered called Horizons. I'm calling it Chambers 2030. I'm stealing it. I'm not even going to attribute it. Okay, I'll attribute it. All right, fine. So before we get into that, who are we? We're now about 1,250 members, which represents over 2 million employees worldwide. And that's kind of an exaggeration. We get to count 3M, okay? So do we have 2 million in this region? No. But we have the voice of 2 million plus employees come through my board of 57 people, all of who say, can I be on your board, please? Because business happens here, the voices are organized here, contributions to advocacy thinking and economic development, inclusion work, and input to the mayors and the governors and the county commissioners happen through our organization. So this year we put together our first report to the community, a little bit about who we are, and we didn't bring any, and I apologize. Our community report, we should have brought some. But the whole purpose was to say, we're the value proposition when it comes to investment. I'm not going to lie, but that makes me very dangerous. We're smaller. That makes us very nimble. If you haven't invested for a while, brace yourselves. I'm coming for you without apology. And that was the whole purpose of us communicating what we're doing. But we have to back up our pursuit for new development with organizational processes, greater partnerships. So we found this ACCE report called Horizon Initiative, which basically said, what's ahead for chambers? It was like, that was what I was looking for. Well, they talk about a couple of different trends, and they're listed right there. Belonging and gathering, communications and technology. I'm not going to make you listen to this because it's a 5-minute introduction. But those are the different trends we're seeing in chambers. And that had me concerned because belonging and gathering basically says how you are engaging in your marketplace is different. That's going to be frustrating. Watch that go. How you're engaging, what we call civic rent, is done. You as an organization are investing because there is a value that you perceive, an outcome that you require, and you're willing to pay for the right outcome and opportunity. That said, you're not just going to pay because it's the thing to do. Then I better make sure I know what we're doing so I have a value proposition to sell. Communications and technology. You understand that in order for us to grow, I've got to figure out how to deliver digital programming. I've got to figure out how to do live streaming so an event we have in St. Paul can be shared with my nephew who works in Fargo Chamber, which is kind of cool. We want to be able to talk to Grand Forks with our programming. We want to talk to Oakdale and not have you guys have to drive all the way across to Golden Valley to see something that you can see here in Oakdale. Scarcity and abundance. So these are the 8 priorities. I'm only going to talk about the first 3 because this is the area of focus. Scarcity and abundance is, in my mind, the most important reason what we're doing will work. We spoke about it a little bit at our, can I ask how many of you were at our annual meeting last week? So you recognize the language about scarcity and abundance. We talked about this idea that there's two approaches to life relative to scarcity and abundance. The scarcity philosophy tells us, which is the traditional business model, win-lose. There's only one winner. There's only so much money on the table. I'm going to get me some. And if I'm really good at what I do, I'm going to take some from you. It's competition. It's capitalism. As a chamber, I don't consider myself in a territory. You don't have a territory. You may think you have a territory. I'm a capitalist. If I have a better deal than you do, I'm stealing your members. Scarcity. I don't care if you don't grow. I'm going to grow because I'm good. The philosophy of abundance tells us something different. It tells us it doesn't have to be win-lose. One of the first conversations I had with our board when I started in August of 2017. We had to do board. We had to figure out a new board for 2020. Remember, 57 people. I don't know any of them. Oh my God. Who's due? Who's ready for renewal? How do I do this? Then we had to do a budget. Then we had to do a 3-year strategic plan, all in 4 months, when I don't even know where the keys to the restroom are yet. But one of the first things we talked about is this idea about abundance and scarcity, which is we have to change the dialogue. How do we talk about things? We aren't a team. This isn't a team. Because the language of team is the language of unintentionally win-lose, in-out, us, them, belonging, not belonging. And we even use the language we versus they, right? And it's unintentional, it's natural, and it needs to change. And we started 3 years ago talking about this. We're not a huddle, we aren't a team. What we are is shoulder-to-shoulder journeymen heading in the same direction, which is, of course, community vitality. We all care about our kids. We all care about our community. We all care about our job. We want to make money. We want to be able to provide for our families. And suddenly, when we're shoulder-to-shoulder heading in that same direction, we look around and realize all these other people are heading in the same direction we are. People who moments ago were on the outside of the huddle now we're heading in the same direction. Isn't that interesting? And how you talk about your organization ultimately changes how you think and ultimately manifests in how you behave. So we aren't a team, in, out. I'm not approaching chambers with the perspective of scarcity, which is I'm going to get me mine and I'm going to steal your members away because it's me versus you. All that stuff wraps up into what do chambers look like moving forward within the context of a mature marketplace. The first realization I had when I started my job, I said, well, how many chambers are there anyway? Because I knew a few. There's 32 chambers of commerce in this market. 32. In the East Metro alone, there are 17. The biggest companies, think the healthcare, think the banks, think the utilities, they have to be in like 32 chambers in one market. Have somebody staff it, pay for the annual dues. Oh, by the way, sponsor it because you are an important company, and if you don't sponsor, apparently you don't care about us. All this down the road. So you can imagine the economic challenge of the size of these chambers. On top of that, the chambers themselves are struggling economically. So we've got to figure out how to address the fact that belonging and gathering is different. We are the whitest group of people in any organization you're ever going to find. What is that about? Is there a team mentality here that's going on that we're missing? Probably. How do we change that dialogue? We are the oldest group. Well, clearly we're not speaking to the young people very well. What's wrong there? Belonging and gathering is different. How are we communicating with folks? Got to figure that piece out, and then ultimately scarcity versus abundance. How do we do things differently? And I will tell you, doing any of these things differently is risky. In fact, because I tend to be I'm military. Jarheads understand. You make a plan, you execute the plan. You just charge that hill. And well, sometimes if you charge too fast, you trip, you create promises you can't activate on, you overextend yourself financially. So of the many board members that I have, we created an advisory committee to be my bumpers, to protect me from myself. Too many ideas, too much innovation, too many partnership opportunities. it still needs to be grounded in good business sense. So that advisory committee has helped us innovate. How can we think differently? How can we be more diverse? How can we invite people? How can we cross over the bridge to another community and sit in that spot for a minute and say, well, this looks pretty good from here. I like this. And figure out how we can work together. How can we, for example, the Black Chamber and the Hmong Chamber both have committed to working with us. Well, how can we elevate them instead of competing with them? Why do I need to be a more diverse chamber by hunting down a token Hmong business or an African American business just to say I'm more diverse? How about we find the organizations invested in a cultural community and invest in them? Doesn't that make more sense? And then partner with them. So that's what we're doing. So this whole idea of an affiliation started with these concepts of how do we do business differently. It's still got to be grounded in, am I going to make money and make payroll? But we all are asking ourselves that question. And if we can figure out how to share resources, how we can share training. We had an education series this morning done in partnership with another organization. They do it better than we do. So we just have our training people go to their events and take advantage of their expertise. So our annual meeting, we talked about changes coming, and that's okay. And I will tell you that I had such an epiphany last week, right before the annual meeting. We had dinner with our guest speaker, a gentleman by the name of Travis McCready. I brought him in from Boston. And as we were talking about changes coming, generational, we need to be able to speak to the future, which is more diverse, which is younger. How do we do that? I realized this idea that not only are we changing how we do our work, but we're changing the very nature of our work. No wonder it's been so hard to reorganize and think and build relationships and figure out a cost model where we can all make money doing this and save cost efficiencies. And who are we going to find to actually do this work? Thank God for Kim O'Brien. 5 more minutes. All right, so that's the philosophy of what we've been doing. We're going to make these available for you in terms of the slides so you can see, this is all the research that I've done in the last 2.5 years to learn what we need to be focusing on. And this is talking about how we've done our evolution. I'm just going to go to this slide because this is a fun one. So I spend a lot of time, although I'm talking a lot here, I know, I'm much more interested in sitting down with you and asking you, what are you doing? What are you learning? I've got this problem. What do you think? So a good friend of mine runs a company that owns several McDonald's, Courtney Henry. It's the Henry family. His dad, Louis, and I know each other from back in the day. Courtney's the next generation. He looks like he's 12. Oh my gosh, he's got kids. Anyway, so I say to Courtney, I had him over for dinner, he and his wife, and they have to bring their kids. Kids are required in my house, so they oblige me, they bring their kids. And I said, I got this problem, Courtney. I'm trying to figure out all the things that we do. And my board is saying to me, you've only got so many hours in a day. You got to get rid of something. If you're going to do these new things, what are you going to give up? Well, I don't want to choose between my babies. What do I do? And Courtney says, you got to dump the egg white McMuffin. I said, excuse me. I said, what are you talking about? I own McDonald's stock. If you are interested in stock, you better buy that company stock. That company is amazing. And what they've got is process. What they've got is consistency, repeatability. Every mother you know with young kids knows the best bathroom in the country is at a McDonald's, bar none. That's where you spend your money. So they're a machine. So I said, Courtney, what do I do? How can I be a machine when it comes to delivery? He says, we had to get rid of the egg white McMuffin. He says, we thought we needed to expand our services to offer more to more people. And some people really like the egg McMuffin, this egg white McMuffin. But when we looked at cost-benefit analysis, we weren't making enough money, so I chucked the egg white McMuffin. So that's our phrase. I haven't yet decided which egg white McMuffins I'm getting rid of, but we've got to streamline our work to think more strategically and run our organization really like a smart corporation. Basically, identify what we do best and sell it. So our evolution, this is just some stuff we've done in the newspaper, in part because we're a head down, get the work done kind of group. And to some degree, if your members, the members want to see you throwing a pass to believe that you're actually playing a game. And if you're busy with your head down and you forget to talk about or show the fact or demonstrate that you can throw a pass and win a game, your members aren't quite sure you're in the game at all. So we've done a lot more in the area of publicity and public affairs this last year to talk about what we're doing. Because at the end of the day, what you have is your experience of our work in these last 2.5 years has been Kim O'Brien in this place serving your organization. It needs to come from a place of authenticity and trust. I get that. If we're gonna take advantage of you, if we're going to absorb you, these are scary things. If we're going to take away your identity, that is the biggest reason I experience resistance to any kind of partnering or affiliation, is that fear of, I don't know you, you're going to take us over. Our sound is important to us, and I assure you, the reason I'm here specifically today is to say, we know what we do well. We don't do what you do well. We don't do Oakdale well like you do, nor do we understand the importance of your community priorities like you do. We're interested in figuring out how to organize ourselves as a region around workforce, advocacy, programming, training, communications, technology, relationship building, intentional networking opportunities that we're doing, which is a whole another body of work, which is quite interesting. But I wanted to stop simply to make myself available for a couple of questions, because you can tell I'm enthusiastic, and I apologize for too many words at you. But can I pause and ask if you have any questions of us and what we're doing?
When you think of growth from the St. Paul area chamber, how much growth is too much growth? At what point do you say, okay, now it's Oakdale, now it's Whittier, now it's Leon, now it's, where do you kind of...
Where does growth stop? How big is big enough? Well, I don't know. What does a community need? You know? Here's what I know about growth. My background is private sector. In the business community, in the accounting world, there is this concept of the 8-digit glass ceiling. It's when a company tries to go beyond $10 million. There's this weird thing, and any of you who are accountants understand this. You have to change how you operate to get past 10 million. Similarly, when you have more than about 40 employees, that's another turning point. It requires you to do things differently. And there's a book called The E-Myth Revisited. It talks about there are 3 pieces to a business. If you're an accountant, you've got the technical expertise, you've got the entrepreneurial spirit, and you've got the money, the business sense. Those 3 things are required to start a business. Typically, if you're an accountant working for an accounting firm and you want to start your own business, you've got 2 of them. We typically have 2 of those 3 things, right? So once you get to that 8-digit ceiling, you've got to have all 3, so you've got to corporatize your thinking. Chambers, I would say that ceiling is at about 3 million. So we're in a $2.5 million organization. We've grown since I started from a $1.7 million organization to a $2.5 million organization. And due to our new divisions to do some innovative things, and due to our partnerships, we're not making any more money in terms of net income because we're having more staff. But the $3 million level is, I think, the glass ceiling for us, where we have to think about how to better organize. I have only so many pieces of me, and in my size, everything that we do requires a piece of me. I think that's the glass ceiling thing. For a $10 million organization, you can still give a piece of you and do it all. Once you get over that ceiling, it can't be you. And that means it can't be the personality. This isn't the B machine, right? This is the business machine. And how can that be bigger than? So I'm thinking we've got to get over the $3 million hurdle. To give you an example of how big we could be, Greater Cleveland Partnership is a $16 million organization. Why? They provide medical and dental benefits for micro and small companies. They provide 401k plans for small businesses. We're trying to figure out how to do that. We're trying to figure out how to create employee resource groups for small companies who aren't big enough to have their own. There's real value there. And in so doing, you can do economic development and workforce development and lots of services back to the community. Anything else? Well, the bottom line is we are here to figure out how to serve you and how to work in more close collaboration with you. We don't really know how it looks yet. I think we're kind of driving into the fog just a little bit. We know it needs to be different than what it's been. We're not really sure we're going to wind up relative to size and who is interested in working with us. but we know we're heading in that direction, and we're very grateful that Oakdale is interested in figuring out how we can work together. So thanks for letting us come and introduce our organization to you.